Poverty is not just the absence of money, but the absence of opportunity. And the United States is a country where you have both freedom and abundant opportunities. And moving to the United States has given me both. I grew up in Lagos, Nigeria. I came from a close-knit family. I was the third of four children. And the best thing that my parents gave me was the gift of education. Even though I came from a poor family, they gave me education with the instruction that this is the tool that will help me to dig my way out of poverty and ignorance. But what my parents did was that they instilled in us the value of faith, hard work, and not giving up. They made us realize that if you put in the work, you will definitely get the reward. I came without a dime in my pocket. All I had was big dreams, determination to succeed, and the resilience. I got my first job at the age of 14. My job was on a construction site. My duties were to move concrete on a large pan from one end of the construction site to another one. I worked on that day from around 6 in the morning to about 7 at night. At the end of the day, the employer refused to pay me. And the reason was because she did not authorize the foreman to hire me. So I worked from sunup to sundown and didn't get paid. That tore up my spirit. And from that moment on, I decided that I was going to become a lawyer. And I was going to use every ounce of strength within me to fight against injustice, regardless of how powerful the opponent is. I am a man that worked my way up from nothing. I know what it means to feel like you're being unfairly treated, and I'm the person that can stand up to opponents regardless of how big or how powerful they are. Welcome to this episode of Legal Angle with Emmanuel, the Law Olawale. I have a special guest today, and she is the CEO of Atlanta Personal Injury. Her name is Jen Gore-Cuthbert. As you can see, she's a very busy person, but thank you for joining us on this episode of Legal Angle.
Thank you so much for having me. And it's great to connect with you today and see you in person on here. Um, your opening story is so powerful.
Well, thank you. You also have a compelling story, and hopefully, in the course of this show, you will get to tell our audience. Now, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
So, my name is Jen, and I am the owner of Atlanta Personal Injury Law Group, as you alluded to. I have three children. They're 9, 6, and 2. I'm married, and my law firm is about 9 years old. It's going to be 9 next week. Um,
Congratulations.
I am originally from New York. Um, and yeah, I kind of got into this area of law and personal injury due to my own experiences, kind of like similar to you, where you had something driving you to become a lawyer. And yeah, that's kind of the short summary.
Wow. You grew up in New York. What part of New York did you grow up in?
I was born and raised about an hour and a half north of Manhattan, so outside of New York City. And I lived there till I was about 17. And then my parents moved to Florida. And that's how we started like heading down to the south. But yeah, so um, I'm thankful I've been able to build a business in a place that I wasn't born and raised in, similar to you.
Yeah. What was it like growing up in New York? What was high school like?
Um, my life in New York is a tough place. It's not like a place that is easy to grow up in my opinion. It's very expensive to live in New York. And, while I have a lot of love for where I'm originally from, there was a lot of tough things that happened in New York. New York is a very competitive place, and the people are kind of hard, you know? And looking back, like, I do think living in the South is a better fit for me, now, and I think there's a lot of opportunities down here in Atlanta, and that's what really drew me to come move to Atlanta. The weather's a little bit better, um, but New York is, like, very fast paced, and it's very competitive, and it's very expensive, and you have to really um, be on it because everyone was moving to New York to pursue their dreams, and it's a very competitive place. One of the things that I think is really good about me growing up in New York is that I have like a New York work ethic. Um, that's just very normal in New York for people to work three jobs or just have a really, really incredible work ethic. So I am very grateful that I have that and, that I'm very competitive. So that's probably from my New York upbringing.
I can relate to because when I first came to the United States too, I started from New York. So
Yeah.
I know how competitive it is, how you have to do two or three jobs to pay the rent. Then moving to Ohio, I also realized that with that, if I do two or three jobs, I'll be like very rich
Yes.
and because everything is cheaper. Yeah, but then the competitive edge of the spirit you've developed from New York never leaves.
It never leaves. It's the New York hustle, and I think it's a great foundation. I just don't I didn't wanna live that, like, life for my entire life. Like, where I grew up, it was very common for people in my city to take a train every day from my town to Manhattan. I think it would be about 2-hour commute, like an hour and a half for sure, but could be 2 hours every day there and back. And I just think that is a really tough lifestyle to, have to do a 2-hour commute into the city. And then, when do you see your kids? Like, when do you work out? You know?
Hardly ever. You spend most of the time on the train.
Yeah.
And without even saying hi to other people.
Yeah. And it's not a like super friendly place, I would
It's
say,
not.
comparatively to the South.
It's
Like,
not.
but the funny thing is, like, when you're from New York or you live there, people, I don't think, try to be unfriendly. It's just part of the culture that you stick to yourself. You don't pest they consider it like bother other people. You don't engage, like, you just do your own thing.
Yes, yes. I described it as being a part of a lonely crowd. That's
Yes.
where I would feel like to live in New York. And when did you realize you wanted to become a lawyer?
So I went to business school. I always wanted to own my own business, and then, basically what happened was I got into a really bad car accident, and, I it was pretty bad. I mean, I thought that I was paralyzed, so, um, they had to cut me out of the car, and, it was not a good situation, and, um, that was kind of my first, like, bad experience that kind of led me to feel like, I don't really know my rights. I don't really know how to deal with this situation. And, when you're not a lawyer and you're dealing with a legal situation, it's very overwhelming. And I didn't like the feeling of not knowing. We all live in a world, and there's rules, and you really don't know what your rights are, and you don't know a lot of the rules of the society that we live in unless you're a lawyer.
So that inspired you. And you also had an incident where your identity was stolen. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so, in my 20s, I feel like life was not fabulous. There was some really bad things that happened, including My identity was stolen by my employer, and I was involved in a lawsuit for over $100,000, which at that time was a lot of money for me, and still is a lot of money for a lot of people. So I had to defend myself in that lawsuit because she forged my name and some other things. And the thing that you don't realize about the justice system is even if you are accused of something, even if you're innocent, you still have to pay to defend yourself. So if you don't have the funds to defend yourself, there is a level of injustice in that, because just the accusation requires a defense, or you'll get a judgment against you. At least in the civil courts. Obviously, the criminal court system has its own perils if you can't defend yourself. So again, another situation where I was like, I don't like the feeling that I am dealing with something and I have no idea like what's going on and how strong of a case I have, or whatever. And at the end, after you spend all this money on a defense lawyer, all you get is you're innocent. There's no like, well, here's the money and all the money you had to pay. So that was, and honestly, the experience of having the lawyer was also a bad experience, to be frank. I feel like the lawyer really didn't advocate for me. I mean, it was resolved, but like the experience of being a client in a law firm, it was not a positive one. And I just always thought like I could do better than this. I could provide better legal services. So, and then another event happened, which was that my high school boyfriend died in a motorcycle accident. And so, things weren't looking awesome. Just like I'm sure in your life, people go through struggles and makes them who they are.
Wow, those incidents, they change the trajectory of your life and made you decide to become a lawyer. Let's take a short break to watch a little video.
My name is Jennifer Gore-Cuthbert, and I started this law firm to help people who were hurt like I was hurt in my car accident. I was in a wheelchair for 6 months. I didn't know if I was going to be paralyzed. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I got a second chance, and my second chance is here to help people through this process. At the core of it, at the heart of what we really stand for, is we stand for empowering people and taking people who are in a very confusing place and educating them and making them feel at the end of the process that they're in control of their lives again. The biggest issue is dealing with the insurance company, because if the insurance company did what was right and what was fair, a lot of people wouldn't be in this struggle that they're in. And so it's not just about the car accident. The car accident happened and we have to deal with it, but the biggest issue that most of my clients are facing, and that I was facing when I was in this situation, was dealing with a difficult insurance company that is making every step of the way challenging, and there's a great chance that you won't get compensated fairly unless you have somebody by your side who knows what they're doing. Bad things are going to happen in life, but it's what you do about those things that really matter at the end of the day. You still have choices, you still can be in control, and we're here to help people take back control of their life. We believe every person should be empowered through the process. This is my story. Now let's tell yours.
That's a very powerful video.
Yeah, it's funny, and like when it's your story, it's just so normal because it's your story, I'm sure you feel the same way. But yeah, I think when you have a connection to what you do, it's important.
Do you think that connection that you have to people getting injured, do you think it's part of what made your firm to be successful?
I think that I have a unique perspective on law because of my experiences. I think there's a lot of lawyers that can't put themselves in the seat of their client. They approach law from a different angle than, maybe I do or you. And I also am committed to building a firm that's focused on client experience. And I don't know if that's common or not.
Thank you. And the name of your firm is very unique. It's like it takes on the name of the city.
Yeah.
What's the secret behind the name?
I mean, as a marketer at heart, I mean, I think your name should be helping your clients understand what you do. And when we switched the name to that name, Atlanta Personal Injury Law Group, the purpose was that when people call or looked at our firm, that they knew that this is exactly what we do and they're calling the right place. And I think it's been an asset to our firm because it kind of also kind of gave the culture of our firm and what we're all about, and helps people easily identify whether they're calling the right place.
Correct. Even the name itself is an SEO generator. If someone is looking for any kind of personal injury law firm in Atlanta, your name pops up.
Yeah, that's been a huge asset. I mean, when I first started it, nobody was doing trade names in Georgia. And if you look at our name, like the full technical name is Atlanta Personal Injury Law Group Gore. A lot of people kind of shorten it or talk like about, as they do with many law firm names, like just the shortened version. But I thought to myself, well, I'm just going to put my last name on the end, but I still want that to be the name. And I had to, fight with the bar and get them to, well, I really didn't have to fight with the bar. Other lawyers kept reporting me for using that name. And then I had to defend myself to the bar, and the bar was like, you're in compliance, and it was no issue. But there was a lot of resistance from other lawyers, and now they're all doing it. So what can you do?
Yeah, I was going to ask you that question because it's so unique. That did you face any challenge from the legal community? But I guess you just answered that question. And how did you feel having to go through that, especially dealing with firms that have been in place long before you ever became a lawyer?
So my point of view is there is always a place for a new business, even in a saturated industry, if you're going to provide great service. And I learned that lesson, I think, when I was first working one of my first jobs. If you show up, I don't care if the person who's been there has been there for 10, 20 years. If you show up and you provide a superior service or value, that person has a threat. And I think it's an important lesson that we all have to keep in mind as a business, especially as we get bigger. But there is always room to do better and to provide and honestly, in our legal community, customer service and client service and even marketing, lawyers have not been traditionally amazing at. So I really didn't worry too much what other people were doing, because my thought was like, just do the best that I can do. And if I do great and I build a great brand and I have great customer service, like there'll always be a space for me.
Thank you. And you started your law practice straight out of law school. And what was that like for you?
So I went to night law school. I barely got into law school, just to be clear. I had to apply to law school like 3 different times. It was a time when a lot of people were going to law school. It was very competitive to get in. And I really wasn't like the number one student in business school because I was always working. I started working when I was like 14, I think is similar to you. And I was always doing like a lot of different things. So I didn't go to undergrad thinking I'm going to go to law school. So I wasn't like super strategic. And so I got into a law school, and then they said, well, you can't work, if you go in the day program. So I was like, let me go in the night program. And I'm telling you, the night law school program has some of the most amazing people because they're professionals who are going to law school at night and working and very dedicated. So that was a great experience. But I worked during the day at a law firm 3 days a week or 4 days a week. I don't remember, but I had multiple jobs. I worked in the library because, going to law school, my parents were like, if you go to law school, that's on you. And it was always like I knew I would have to support myself. So, and I didn't want to take out a ton of loans just to support myself. So I always worked. But the gift in that was that I knew when I graduated after 3.5 years, like I had been working in the field of personal injury for all that time. And I felt pretty confident that I could start a law firm and just figure it out.
Wow. Did your business degree did your business degree help you in starting and running the practice within the first year?
I think that the business degree, obviously, I think a business degree is a good thing to have. It teaches you to think, about things in business that you'll run into if you own a law firm. But I think foundationally, where I learned a lot of things and kind of like my mindset is because my parents both my parents worked for themselves, and my dad had multiple businesses. And I was just raised in that environment of like being a business owner is like the best thing in life.
Wow. So, getting out of law school, starting your business as this young female business owner, CEO, how did you feel having to navigate a world that is so dominated by men?
This question comes up like all the time, and I've thought about it. I don't know. I don't know if it's my upbringing. I think in some ways I was kind of raised like a guy because there was all girls and I was the oldest, and my dad kind of took me under his wing in terms of like raising him kind of like I was his like little sidekick. And my dad and my mom, really just talked to me my whole life about how I could do anything. And I think the conversations about what it's like to be a powerful woman or a businesswoman really stems back to how you were raised as a child and the expectations you had for your life. Because it's to this day, I literally believe I can do anything. Like if you give me enough time, I could figure anything out. I mean, I might have to hire some people, but like I will figure it out. And I have that kind of confidence. And my parents, my dad especially, always thought like he would say things like, when you own a business, so it was like, I think how you speak to your girls or your children matters. And although I had to like work at a very young age, it was very like for a specific reason. My dad did not want me to be like spoiled. He wanted me to have an extreme work ethic. So my dad could have paid for a lot of things for me. He could have paid for law school, but my dad always said, like, my number one job is to make sure you're completely independent. So I think that is a mindset. That's a way I was raised. And, the day that I was able to get on my own, I never had to take any money from my parents. That's a really proud moment for me, to be completely financially independent, strong, and that was an expectation in my childhood.
Wow. So your parents raised you, they groomed you to be a leader and to be independent. And
Very.
that has helped you in growing your firm and running a business.
Now, the downside here that I don't want to like mislead anyone, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. and she had a little haircutting business. So she wasn't like this big entrepreneur, but my dad was. And I remember as a young girl, this is like in the 80s, women were not as out there as they are now. And I remember thinking like my mom didn't have as big of a voice in the world as my dad did. My mom was more traditional, and I just remember thinking as a little girl, like I'd rather be more like my dad, because I felt like he was more, he had more of a say, and that really, really impacted me. And I never saw myself as like a traditional woman.
Yeah, it's amazing how things connect with you. It's like you see things that, okay, well, this is what I don't want to be, or this is what I don't want to do. And then you turn it around to build yourself into the person you are. The same way you had that experience with the law firm when you had your case and you felt like, well, I could do a better job. Growing up too, you saw how your mom was, you're like, I don't want to be like, oh, I want to be like this person, and you just turn things around to become who you are, the way you are.
And it's been hard because I think that there are women that may love that lifestyle. They may love to be a traditional woman, and that's their path and their choice. And I'm not here to turn anyone against that. It just, for me, that wasn't my dream.
Okay. And starting off your law firm, like I said, straight out of law school, straight out of business school, what was the first year like?
It was so exciting because, all throughout law school, this is another thing that I think is important. I was telling people I'm going to own a personal injury law firm. Like, you have to speak your dream into existence. And so it wasn't like a surprise, I don't think, when I started my law firm, and friends and colleagues started sending me referrals. I'll never forget the first case I ever got. And I had, many different people that kind of helped me get started and just sent me business or sent me a referral. And um, I think that it was exciting because I was so used to being really broke that, like, if I made any money, it was like, this is amazing, So it's all about perspective.
And when did you win your biggest verdict or your biggest settlement? What was it like?
Um, that was probably a couple years in. And that was very, very, very exciting. And kind of the other kind of backstory that I've kind of like glazed over, but I haven't said overtly, is that my daughter was born like around the exact same time as I started the law firm. So I started the law firm when she was 2 months old. So that was, nice in the beginning when I first started the law firm, because I didn't have a lot of clients and she was really, really young. But then it was also challenging, because it's like just the journey of parenthood is challenging in the beginning, especially when it's a new thing. So I'm just like glad that I made those investments then, because now, I have a lot of extra time and luxuries that, that I've earned by building a business.
And as a female CEO of a law firm, how do you decide who to hire or who to fire? What is that decision making like?
Um, I am like, I am sometimes that is hiring and managing people is an ongoing skill set that you have to constantly develop and groom at different levels of your company. I think that the leader that I was when I first started off is nowhere near as good as the leader I am now. And hopefully, like in 10 years, I'll be like 10 times better than I am now. Leadership is like a skill you have to work on. Hiring, I've made so many mistakes. I've made so many bad hires. I've made so many great hires. At the point we're at now, we have a leadership team, and we have people in place that just do hiring, because that's a skill set in and of itself. But I think you have to define your culture and you have to hire for your culture. You have, I think something that people don't understand is that if somebody is, let's say that they work for Apple, if they're very tech driven and they, there's different characteristics of the culture of Apple that could make somebody a great fit. But if the person has all of the opposite characteristics, as wonderful of a company as Apple could be, it could be a terrible job. So I don't think sometimes there's just good companies and bad companies. I think there's companies that are not a fit for a particular person. And we had learned that the really hard way. We were hiring the wrong people, the wrong culture fit. And, for example, we're paperless. Well, we were hiring people that they love paper. And so every day was a struggle for them because they never were going to switch over to being a paperless person. They weren't embracing it. So culture is a big part of hiring. And, and then there's always the wild card factor. You think you have someone great and then they could be not great once they get in. So one of my pieces of advice for any person that's hiring is you have to remain optimistic. You can't let a few bad hires cripple you and make you so that you stop taking risks and stop hiring people. I've seen so many solo lawyers where they're just like, oh, I had a terrible experience. So they just basically decide they're never going to hire anyone else because it's so hard and painful. And I think you just have to keep going because if you get an amazing employee, it's also a life-changing experience.
Thank you. So how do you curate or create a culture for your business?
You have to spend the time and do that exercise. So what do you stand for? What do you stand against? What has historically been the things that drive you crazy in an employee? What has historically been the thing that you're like, when I have people like this, I love them. For me, our firm is very tech driven. So, having people that are tech savvy is a really important factor for us in hiring because we use a lot of different technology, and having someone who's really, really, really struggles with technology, it just causes so many pain points.
Thank you. It's one thing to handle the technical culture. It's another to handle the value system. How do you balance the two? Let's say, for instance, now you hire someone who's tech savvy, paperless, and all that. But then when it comes to the values of the firm, maybe how do you balance that?
So in our guiding principles, which we spent a year developing our culture and our guiding principles, we listed out 7 things that are really important to us. And, you can do between 5 and 7. And some of those are compassionate. So you could be the greatest personal injury case manager or lawyer, but if you don't have compassion and customer service in your voice when you're talking to clients, it's not going to be a great experience. For us, efficiency is a really, really high priority on our principal list because we just have to run that firm very efficiently. We can't be wasting our clients' time making their cases delay and linger on for years. Organization, being highly organized and systems focus is another part of our principles. And you can develop these, you have to kind of think like, what is this about me? What do I love? A lot of times your guiding principles follow you even in your personal life. The same things kind of apply, so there's lots of different exercises you can do to embrace and to kind of like reveal what is a culture that would represent what you believe.
Thank you. Apart from running a law firm, you also encourage or coach other female or women to become successful. And your practice is, you have about 90% female employees.
Yeah, we just seem to attract a lot of women that want to come work there. It's so interesting because we never have set out to do that, but that's what has happened.
What is it like to be a leader of leaders, a leader of other women, and raising other women leaders?
It's like one of those questions that I'm just like, I just see people as people in so many ways. So I don't even think about like, oh, I'm raising up a woman leader, but I would just say that I love people that are ambitious. I love people that are driven and really care about what they're doing. And I've thankfully been able to assemble a group of amazing people that have strengths that I don't have. It's important to hire people that are better at things that you're not great at. And yeah, I mean, I feel very inspired by many of the women that work at my firm, and I'm so grateful that they want to come work there.
Yeah, what are those challenges you face as women in business and running a successful practice?
So again, like I don't know, like we've talked about this question, and I don't find being a woman to be a challenge at all. Like Like, I just almost, like, ignore that fact of life. Like, I just do my thing. I feel like if I provide value, if I'm bold, if I put myself out there and I grab every opportunity that comes in front of me, I think people that are ambitious like that, you'll win no matter what you are, man, woman, whatever. I almost have blinders on. It's like I don't even think about that. And if someone has an issue with me being a woman, I just ignore it. I didn't even hear it. And I think if you're bold and you just put yourself out there and you don't worry about what everyone else thinks, you will win eventually.
Thank you. What are those essential qualities that a person need to become a successful leader?
I think you have to be growth mindset. Um, a lot of the commonalities I see with people who are having a lot of success is just the fact that you always want to get better. You've never arrived. You're always looking, how can I get better? How can I get better? That's my mindset. Like, I'm always trying to learn and grow. And I think you really need to surround yourself with great mentors and people who have the results that you are trying to get. They already have it. So you need to align yourself with people that can teach you how to get to the next level.
Did you have to get a coach?
I have had coaches for the last 7 years of my law firm. I've had many different coaches. We met at a conference. We were sitting at the same table. Yeah, what about you? Have you had any coaches?
Yes, because that's one of the things you have to keep growing. Otherwise, when you stop growing, you start dying. And
Yes,
like you said, you have to surround yourself with people who are also as ambitious or even doing better than you. Because if you're the smartest person in the room, then you need to find another room.
100% agree. Yeah, I mean, and you might outgrow certain coaches. That's happened to me as well, and you need to know when it's time to leave because sometimes you get so like you afraid to go on to the next level of your journey because you don't want to leave another part behind, but sometimes you do need to I mean, I tend to find myself outgrowing everything I do, you know? It's like that was really exciting and now I'm like, you know, I want a new challenge. So the
What
constant chase for finding new mentors is always important.
new challenges? So
Mm.
your advice to anyone out there who aspires to leadership or business ownership is to be willing to adapt to change.
Oh, change is everything. Change is all day, every day. It's the only thing that's constant. And you have to embrace change. I'm not uncomfortable in change. I mean, there's moments when it's uncomfortable, but I'm almost the opposite. Like if things stay the same too long, I'm like looking around like, okay, how are we going to go to the next level if we're just the same right now? You know, I love going to the next level.
And moving on to the next level, not knowing what is going to happen, isn't that risky?
We call it building the bike while riding it. Not everyone loves this. And like a lot of times we'll say to the team, like, okay, we're going to do this. And I just know in the back of my mind, we don't really know how we're going to do it, but I know we're going to figure it out. And figuring it out might mean we're going to hire some people that aren't going to work out. We're going to build a process that needs to be broken and rebuilt. I mean, we're going to probably crack a few eggs making this omelet. It's not going to be pretty, but the end result is we're going to like adjust, and get better.
Thank you. So, if you can take the risk and be willing to fail, the likelihood of success is less.
Yeah. What about you? Are you comfortable with taking risks?
That's the essence of life.
Yeah. I mean, look at your journey of coming from another country. I mean, everything else is like, these are not even risks. These are just,
It's like no pain, no gain.
yeah. How do you think your like experience has helped you like in your video with building your law firm?
I think similarly, when you have that sense of independence, that sense of competitiveness, when you decide not to look at all those angles that other people might see as disadvantages, and you just decide to ignore it and just do things anyway. So success is assured. So when you're telling your story, it mirrors mine. It's just from a different angle.
It is so true. And I really resonated that when I met you and your energy and your optimism. And I think you have a similar story as me, as like we went through some tough things and we didn't have like, I mean, just a picture perfect childhood, or, you know, things weren't just like given to us, handed to us on a silver platter. But I think that creates your character.
It does, because you have to work for everything, just like you too. In law school, you're not supposed to work in your first year. But instead of me switching to the night school, I was working anyway.
You're even more of a rebel than me.
Because I knew if I didn't work, I wasn't going to survive, because I said, I saw myself through college and law school. So those kind of things, even though it might seem hard when you're going through them, but they kind of build you.
So my question is, as much as you had like a difficult time and all these challenges, and I had the same in a different way, would you want your kids to struggle?
I believe that the way I'm raising, that we're raising our kids, I believe I went through those struggles so that they wouldn't have to. But we raise them to have empathy, to understand that it is not like this for other kids. And I find it rewarding to look at my kids, to see the way they are, the way they talk. So it's like, wow, now I'm learning what it means to be the child of someone who's doing well. Because I'm learning through their eyes, because our childhood, our upbringing is different. So it's a lesson for me too. How about you?
I want my kids to have some of the things I went through. And then there's some, like, for example, my daughter, I want her to have the experience of being raised by a strong woman that she sees living their dream. I didn't have that, right? I had more of like a male role model. I want my daughter to see, she thinks it's very norm. I think my daughter actually thinks that all women live like I do. She doesn't know that there's women that have no power. There's women in other parts of the world that have no freedom, no right. That's such a foreign concept to her.
And that's a good thing, because children emulate what they see. Just like, you became what your dad was.
Yeah.
Same with the kids that were, my kids too. My daughter, she has a voice. No one can tell her any different. My son, the same thing. And I tell them, don't let anyone tell you that there's nothing you can do, including me. If by any chance, maybe, I mistakenly tell you you can't do that, tell me, Dad, you're wrong. I can do all things.
So you're raising them to have a voice. That's really, really important for me. And, but on the other hand, I want my kids to have struggle. I encourage struggle. I think one of the biggest like threats to kids that grow up in affluence is that they lack confidence and independence as adults. And I grew up with some people that's what happened, because my dad was financially successful. He just always would tell me, you have to create that for yourself. So my kids have a lot of chores. And the way we parent them, I have a parenting coach, and a lot of the focus is developing grit and not overcompensating for them to the point where they don't know. Like if something happens to me, I want my kids to be able to fully do things for themselves. When, you're seeing a lot now in our society where 18-year-olds have no life skills, zero, because that's the challenge when you don't have war or struggle or strife, and society becomes very affluent. I think it is a major threat for our children of this generation that they're not prepared for the reality of life.
It is, because the world within your walls is so different. So you want to have to get them ready to face the real world where they have to survive, and where they also have to, they just have to navigate the world that everyone else navigates, and without that grit, it's, second or third generation can lose that touch.
Well, we talk a lot and with my parenting coach about, all animals in nature, their job is to transfer their life skills to their young. So a lion teaches the lion cub how to hunt. And what you're seeing a lot now is just feeding the cub, feeding the cub, feeding the cub, and never teaching them to hunt. And if something ever happens to the adult lion and they never taught the young to hunt, they can't survive. And so we have to kind of remember our role as a parent and why, we did this exercise, like every life skill our kids need to know by the time they're 18, because you don't want to come to when they're 18 and you're ready to take them to college and you're thinking, did I teach them everything that they need to know, And it's a little bit unpopular, but I think our job is to create the next generation of leaders.
Exactly, because leaders are good, and sometimes the way the kids are raised translate to the kind of leaders they will become, or thereabout, or the other way. If you don't raise your kids to become leaders, even if they find themselves in position of leadership, they won't be able to lead.
So another thing that we talk about a lot, and I think this also ties into being a woman owned, I do spend a lot of time with my kids, even though I have a business. And that is that is a high priority for me. So just because you are a woman and you own a business, it doesn't mean you won't be an amazing parent. And I think that was a fear I had, is like, oh, well, will I have enough time to do all these different things? But there is a way to do it, and I'm living proof of that. And there's a lot of things I don't do though. I don't do any I have a housekeeper, I have a lot of help in other areas, but raising my kids, I'm very, very involved with that.
Yeah, some will say that maybe they aspire to leadership, but because they are women and they don't have a supportive partner, that is the impediment. What advice do you have for women who are going through that?
If you don't have a supportive partner, or a partner, if your partner in any way hinders you from living your dream, I don't care if you're a man or a woman, this is not a partner. This is actually a detractor. And that's just like certain things that I have very clear boundaries on, and I would never settle for somebody that would be trying to not let me live my dreams. And I know a lot of people, they've had to go through a divorce because maybe they evolved and grew and their partner didn't, and maybe when they got married they didn't have as much clarity around their dream, and then as they evolved their partner stayed behind. I've seen that happen. But that's just such a tragedy. Your partner should be cheerleading for you and excited for you to live your dream.
It is because that's one of the challenges that that women face. Especially if they're with a partner who's less ambitious or who's threatened by a strong woman, it becomes an issue.
I think I like live in a bubble. I like ignore all these things. I could never be with someone that would try to prevent me from. I feel like that would be a major deal breaker. And I feel so sad for anybody that's in that situation. My husband is totally different than me, but from the day we started dating, I always told him, I'm going to do all these things. Are you good with it? Because if not, then I'm not the girl for you.
I think so. The advice to young women is to create their value system, or don't compromise even during the dating years, because it never gets better. So don't think, okay, maybe after we get married, then he's going to be this or he's going to be that. So you have to set your values straight, even while dating.
And I think it's hard when you're so young and you're naive and you don't know all this stuff. But if you're an ambitious young woman, have the partner you choose could have a significant impact on your life. I think all of us who we marry has a very significant impact. And if the person you marry is in some way against your dream, there's a fundamental flaw in the relationship. Now, they might want to know, how can we do this? How can we navigate it together? But they should want you to pursue your dream. That's I'm sure, I don't know if you have the same kind of standards as well.
Yeah, I believe that either if you are with the right partner, you are complete. If you are with the wrong person, you're finished. So,
But one thing I will say is that throughout our relationship with my husband, I have been growing and changing every single year. I am nothing like the person I was 10 years ago. Evolving. And if you're going to be somebody that is committed to a lifestyle of growth and change, you need to have a conversation with your partner, and they do also need to likely be that same direction, because otherwise you'll just keep growing and growing and growing, and you'll grow in a different way, and you have to have a similar vision for your life as your partner. And I've seen a lot of people, they grow, they change, they might get even better in some way, and then they kind of outgrow their partner.
Yeah. So that's why it's good to always be on the same page, so that you end up complementing each other, so it doesn't become a kind of competition. Because if you're complementing each other, then we can both move in the same direction.
Yeah, I would say that's the biggest challenge in a marriage, is to continually stay on the same page when you're growing, and to have the same vision for your life. Like, you have to have the same values and the same vision. And what's challenging is when you're constantly upping your vision, they might not want to grow that aggressively. I've seen that with a lot of my friends, and I'm not here to say that any of this is easy,
Yeah, it takes a lot of evaluation and reevaluation. So, what drives your success? What drives you?
I just want to live to my absolute maximum fullest potential, and I want to see what's possible, because, I feel like I was born at the greatest time in the world, and for women especially. in the greatest country in the world. And like, I have so many opportunities. Like, I want to see what I can do in my life.
And if, let's say, people want to reach out to you, how can they reach you?
My email is jennifer@atlinjurylawgroup.com. Like I said, I have been coaching some law firm owners and some women law firm owners. I think that the more women and minorities that make multi-million-dollar companies happen, it's going to change the fabric of our country.
So you have dedicated yourself to raising other female leaders who are winning, not just participating.
Yeah, I just think that I have a lot to share with how I've done it. A lot of it has just been my nature, but I do think there's lessons to be learned there, and be bold and go after what you want unapologetically.
Thank you. And you've been on the show we've been talking for almost an hour now. So you're educating our audience about your journey.
Hours.
Yes, from your journey to where you are right now. What does it mean to you to be on this show, Legal Angle?
I loved being on this show. I think that even though we've only met, briefly, I connected with you, and your story is so inspiring. And I think people just need to know that a lot of people's success is not just because they were handed, everything. Like, wherever you are, you can create your life, and you stand for that.
Thank you. And you stand for that too, moving from New York to Florida, and then to Atlanta. Then you have a law firm named after the city, even when others were not even attempting to do it. And you have to fend them off, and you paved the way. You're a trendsetter. Thank you for coming onto Legal Angle, and I appreciate the time, and I appreciate the advice you have for the audience.
Thank you so much. Keep doing what you're doing. People need to hear this.
Thank you. And for those of you watching us at home, thank you for joining us. If you're listening to this as a podcast, thank you too. Until next time, stay safe. Bye for now.